Hello, fellow productivity seekers, and welcome to Captain Time's Productivity Interviews. Today, I have a guest. My guest is Nigel Creaser. And Nigel's an experienced project and program manager with over 20 years of varied project management roles, delivering multi-million pound projects. Obviously, he's from the UK because the rest of us work in unusual other dollars across a wide range of industries, including national, regional government, financial services, telecoms, and he's a former director of marketing for the Project Management Institute's UK chapter. He's also the host of the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast. Lives in North Shropshire with his wife and two daughters. When he's not mangling projects, I was almost going to say managing projects, but I see it's mangling projects.
It's mangling.
Or being a husband and dad, you can find him on a judo mat trying to stay standing or running around, trying to get a bit faster and running a little bit further. He's also the author of a number of books, his latest being Project Manager Productivity Hacks. Welcome, Nigel.
Thank you, Garland. Great to be on the show.
Yes, I'm so glad you're able to come. This is awesome. And I really enjoy the opportunity to talk to other productivity, people in the field my colleagues, right? Because, we often don't get a chance to talk to people at our level of usage. It's usually clients we're trying to just get helping. So that works really well. So Nigel, what first got you interested in productivity?
Well, to be quite frank, I kind of feel a little bit of a fraud with you saying that kind of a colleague in productivity. I've spent, as I say, 20 years in project management, 10 years before that in finance, I describe myself as a failed accountant. And I a proudly failed accountant, should I say. Sorry to all the accountants out there. But over the years, I've been on multiple courses, always been looking at ways of improving productivity. And obviously with my career as a project manager, getting the most in the quickest time, doing it most efficiently, most effectively, it kind of becomes something that you're always thinking about. Even if I'm making a cup of tea and a sandwich in the kitchen, I'll be thinking, I've caught myself before now thinking, right, what's the most effective way to walk around this kitchen to get this done? Can I multitask something where I've got the kettle boiling while I'm doing it? And I think it's just something that sits in the back of my mind, because over time, there's always, and we've talked about this, I think, the fact that there's always more stuff to do than you've got time to get done. And I'm reading Eat That Frog. I've heard about the book before, kind of got the concept, and I'm reading some of the first bits of it now. And in there, the author talks about that exact principle, and it echoed with my thinking is the fact, and some of the podcasts I've listened to over the years, manager tools, where they've talked about the fact that it doesn't matter what you are in your career, whatever you do on your day job, you will never finish everything. It's and I'm pretty sure I pulled out the exit it's like washing clothes. It's like washing dishes. There's always going to be more of them. Yeah. And there's always going to be more tasks. There's always going to be more emails. And it's just about how to get some of those done quicker. And over the years, I've experimented with myself, found little things that worked, listened to things, read books, and gone, oh, well, that helps. I'll do that. Give it a go. Automating stuff, which I know you're big into, and just trying lots of different ways to try and basically get my work done quicker so that I can spend more time with my family or getting thrown on the judo mat or whatever. But it's just kind of getting to the point where some of the tools and techniques I've used, I've shared with people. I've shared with people that I've been working with, people who've worked for me, or even customers that I've been working alongside, and gone, this is what I do. And they go, oh, well, I'll try that. And some of the things on email that I talk about in my book is one of the big ones is around copied emails, and how I deal with those is something that everyone I've talked to said do it. And I thought, actually, every time I talk to someone about this, they say it's a really good idea. So why not stick these rough ideas? I'd say they are pretty rough ideas in some ways, but there's 11 ideas that I use that I think whenever I talk to other people about it, they go, oh, I'll try that. So I thought, let's see how many people I can spread the word, and if I can help someone get home half an hour earlier, or actually have half an hour's lunch, then great, I've succeeded in what I wanted to do.
Interesting that your first comment was how to walk more efficiently around the kitchen. In my case, I had an older brother who really needed his coffee in the morning. I was visiting one time. I filled the kettle and put it on the heat for instant coffee. He says, "You don't do that. You only put 2 cups worth in because we need to get to that coffee now, right?" So what's the quickest way to a cup of coffee? He had it down to that. And so does the productivity carry over to your personal life as well?
Yeah, I try to on my wall here, all my work stuff's on my computer. On my wall I have a to-do doing and a to-do doing, and different classifications for whether it's the podcast, whether it's my writing. Sometimes it's a house, and I can't help it. If we start thinking about doing something to the house, I always immediately start going, right, how do we break this down into component parts? Right, what's dependent on what? And I've got a project plan starting to form in my head. Much to the chagrin of my family and wife. I even at one point, I don't know if you've heard of Kanban boards or whether your listeners have, the visual boards, as I say, the to-do, doing, done. We were doing quite a major bit of work in our garden, and we were all 4 of us trying to do bits and bobs. So we had 3 windows that are sat at the back of the kitchen, and each window became a to-do, doing, done window, and they had Post-its stuck on there. And I think I was the only one who moved any of them around, but it made me feel better. And I think it's something I've said in project management is, and I've read it in other things, is everything is a project.
Yes.
In our lives, when we start looking at it, and project management to me is a life skill, and I try to teach the concept but without the jargon to my kids. And it's a case of, if you've got something to do, break it down into the component parts, break it down into how long you think it'll be, break it down into the dependency. If you start and you do that, we all do that in a greater or less extent, because if you end up just sitting there going randomly doing it, you can end up just spinning your wheels. And I do think that when you're doing stuff, if you're simply going to paint your bathroom, you do that naturally. You go, I've got to buy some paint first. Oh, before I buy the paint, I've got to decide what paint I want. Oh, before I decide what paint I want, I need to decide what style, how much of it do I need? And you do all those things. And if you sat down and put it in a project plan, you already do it, and you do it in the same way. And then productivity is about doing those tasks in an effective and efficient way. Now, whether that's you or multiple people, there's ways of doing it. And I think the focus is the one thing that I think is the bit that helps our productivity. And I think in this day and age, focus is the one thing that we lose a lot more.
Yes.
Whereas finding the time to sit and spend 2 hours doing a piece of work is very difficult to say, oh yeah, and I know I will not have any interruptions and there won't be anything backing up behind us. Whereas, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 years ago, you would have slots of time where things wouldn't necessarily build up in that way, because the speed that things are flying around these days, and quite often a lot of it unnecessary stuff.
So what are some maybe common myths or misconceptions people have about productivity that you'd like to correct?
Time management is probably the big one, and I'm talking to Captain Time here, and I'm kind of like that. Time management, and it's something that's taken me a while. You can't manage time. You've got a limit. That's it. All you can manage is priorities. All you can manage is what you are focusing on. That's all that you have any chance of managing. And if you think of it like that, you realize that actually time's finite. You can't increase it. Therefore, you need to make choices on those priorities. And sometimes with those priorities, you've got to sit there and go, I'm going to get in trouble for not doing that. And that's fine. There'll be certain, I've mentioned it before. One of the first things I talk to people about is about not reading emails. So it may sound a little bit radical out there, but basically, if I am copied on an email, I don't read it.
Right.
Occasionally pop it to them, but I file it automatically using some of Outlook's. I use Outlook as my main tool, and there's some automations in there that when it comes in, it's copied to me, puts it in another folder called CCs, marks it as read. Now, most people say to me, well, that's really, you've got to read all your emails. I mean, what if there's something in that email that I needed to know? What if my boss is asking me to do something? What if a customer, what if there's a whole load of things to say, don't do that. But the way I look at it, and I emphasize this in the chapter in the book, is around when you get an email, you have a limited set of data available to you to decide what to do with that email without opening it. It's on the line. It'll have when it was sent or when it arrived. Even it doesn't even have when it's sent. It's when it's arrived in your inbox. Yeah. So you don't know. It's usually pretty quick, but then again, on servers and things that you don't know. It's a title, which may or may not relate to what's in the email. The title.
One of my pet peeves.
Yeah.
Subject lines that don't match the email anymore.
Yeah, because it can be such a long. I've done it myself, and I've sat there and I've gone, oh yeah. And when someone's come back to me and we talked about it, and go, oh yeah, because it's not about that, it's about this. And I've read emails where I've sat there going, I don't understand. I've read the title and I've read the email, and I'm thinking I don't understand how they join together. It'll have the name of the person who sent it to you, and well, that may say, oh, it's my boss. I must deal with that immediately. But actually, if it's been copied to you, if it hasn't been copied to you, it's to you. You don't know what it is, because it may in there say somebody's not wiping down the counter in the kitchen area. This is important. Make sure you wipe it down. And I'm kind of like, did I need to read that email then? No, probably not. Did I need to read the email? Well, I wipe down the counter every time in there. So actually, no. Yeah, if it was me who didn't wipe it down, then maybe I do need to read it. But someone maybe grab me by the scruff of the neck and say, didn't you read the boss's email? But that sort of thing, the data is poor, what you've got available to you. And it might have an attachment, or it might be important. Now, people put the important flag on there. And when you look at the important flag, 9 times out of 10, it's important to them, but it's not necessarily important to you.
Right.
They don't know your priority list. They don't know what you're working on, whether that is relatively more important than what you're doing or not. And so you look, when you take all those data points into consideration, you sit there and go, that's awful information to make a decision on whether I read it or leave it till later.
Well, and I can see, because the person that's to is the main recipient. Like, that's the person that they're writing to. So of course, that's the main person who has to deal with whatever the issues are. But you don't think there could be a case where it's to Bob Smith at your office, and then they say, Nigel, could you look into this as well? I mean, there could be. So do you worry about missing some of those?
No. I'll tell you why. If I put in exclusions for certain people in my management chain, or my customer, or key teams, or family, or people like that, you can choose who they are, who's important to you, and therefore, if that person comes in, it doesn't get farmed away. But even saying that, if someone copies me and asks me to do something, I'm like, well, why are you copying me? Yeah, this is a letter you should be sending to me. If it's copy, the inference of it was, this is not for action. This is for someone to file, for information, for nothing urgent. So it should be, and especially now, and this is one that I'm sure you know, and I'm sure your colleagues know, with the advent of Slack and things like that, where the use of @ and your name as a tag within the body of an email. I've seen that happen. When I first saw that, I thought that was weird. But then I realized that when you do that, it's really clear which Nigel they want to do something, rather than saying, Nigel, can you do this? It's @ Nigel Creaser, it's my link. But also, when you tag someone in like that, it moves. If I've been copied, it would move my name to the to section.
Okay.
It's something I don't know if it's something I hadn't noticed until recently. And I thought, oh, that's really good. Because that's, again, that whole concept is saying, right, I've tagged you in here. That means it's important to that person. Everyone else doesn't matter. And there is always a risk that you will have something that you really needed to know and you could have done something about.
Yeah.
But in my previous example with the wiping down the counter, there is always a risk in the other method of deciding what your priorities on your emails are. You can look at them and make a judgment on, oh, I'll only read the stuff from the boss first. And every single one of them may be an all hands or a thing like that isn't something they really needed you to deal with then. Whereas actually, the thing that was sent from his boss that you didn't know and then was copied to you, sent to you by someone else, that might be the most important thing. So you're always fraught with getting it wrong, and you can't read them all. So it's about filtering, and there's always going to be a risk. And when I first did this, I was thinking the same thing. Right. And I got a set of emails that I set it up, switched on the button, and I didn't look. I stopped myself looking at that folder until the end of the day. And then at the end of the day, I had a look. And I thought, let's see what's there. And there's this big list, 20 odd emails, same title, may have been different subject, but lots and lots and lots of people involved. And I thought, oh, what have I missed? So I read the last one, and it was something like, great, all sorted. Thanks for all your help. I'm like, okay. So I went back through, had a look what it was, and had a read of the first email. I thought, if I'd read that email cold, I would have got involved. I would have been involved in that conversation. It would have taken time away from what I was doing the rest of the day. And actually, my team sorted it. My team didn't need me. Now, my ego may not have liked it, but my team didn't need me. And I kind of sit there thinking, well, I might have helped them do it a bit quicker and solve it. But actually, that meant I was dealing with things off my priority list that I've got a team of however many, and I could leverage my time, say 15 minutes. Maybe it's 15 minutes to put together a pitch to get some better software for the guys to use. That's maybe, and it's how you're using that time against your priorities, when you're not getting involved in those things that you don't need to get involved with. And as I say, it's not perfect, but neither's the alternatives. And then there's loads of other stuff as well. You've got things like meetings. When people ask you for a meeting, fair enough, sometimes it's a last minute meeting, but actually they don't need to be dealt with there and then. You can take that, stick that in a folder, and end of the day, you look at all the meeting invites you've got and deal with them. Or the great one, I think, is like timesheet and expenses approvals. If you get those, and you'll get a lot of those in my role as a project manager, but maybe as other managers, if you get lots of things like that where you've got to go, right, oh, Joe sent his thing, I've got to log into there, and I've got to check that's right, that's fine, I've approved it, I need this sheet to double check that what he's got there, done. Right, done, Joe. Oh, you finished that, and log out that system into your next team. Oh, Jane's just sent me hers. Oh, I need to get that shit, and immediately you're repeating some of the actions you've done before, and it's not lean, is it? The whole concept of getting in there and doing it in a lean manner.
This is why I usually try to keep tasks out of internal email if possible. I usually try to keep task related stuff within the task or project management system. So because it makes a lot more sense than to be looking for that stuff in email instead of in my task dashboard. So
well, I look at it, and even with those, you can start looking at, you've got to look at prioritizing. But with that, the way I look at it is I batch them. So you'll have at the end of a week when you have to, or the certain day when you must do timesheets, do them then, and do all 10 or 15 of them on the system, and you've just logged in on. You've just got your head up to speed with that, and you're dealing with that now. And so you're in that mode. So you go, bang, bang. Yeah, I've got the spreadsheet. Yeah, that's right. Click. Got the spreadsheet. Click. Right. And you just go bang, 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 bang. You've done it. You'll have done it in a fraction of the time compared to what you would do by those little startup, those getting your head into that and understanding that, and the interruption from other stuff. And eventually, you're more efficient. You're more effective. That's that whole email's a big chain around our neck, but I think once we start realize that we can't read it all, and we don't need to read it all.
Right.
Once you get to that point, and you certainly don't need to read it when it comes in.
No, that's a common mistake. Everybody, jumps to read the emails first when they've got so many other high priority things. So what gets you going in the morning?
Me, coffee.
Coffee.
Again, a coffee. Just one coffee. My morning routine, I tend to hit my calendar is my routine. I don't tend to use task lists.
Okay.
I tend to schedule activities. Now I'm moving back into the kind of, I've tried to use the getting things done kind of approach, but I've struggled over the years to integrate my home inbox and my office inbox so that I'm using it together. But I think I might have just caught a way to do that a little bit by using Microsoft To Do to be able to see my home tasks and my home calendar on one thing so that I can get my head in the right place. but yeah, calendar's the thing with me. A lot of my role is all meetings. It's a lot of meetings, unfortunately, but I do, and then they're not bad. I try to be as effective and efficient with the ones that I set up and as possible. But what I also do is try to schedule blocks of time where I like the new feature within Outlook that gives you the insights that blocks out focus time.
Yeah.
And I'm become much more guarded with my calendar. Certainly back. Last year I was ill. I went off, burnout, stress, whatever you want to call it. I was off for 5 months, and it's made me evaluate some of the control that I handed over to other people of my day. And so I've started to be much more protective of that, and then doing work that is in my priority and kind of relating to my priorities. If I get an email that needs working on, I don't just do it there and then. If it takes more than a couple of minutes, it's going to go and schedule in a block of time where I've got time to focus on it. And that's how I kind of schedule my days, really. But that's it with remote working as well. I'm not traveling, so that's quite good. It has good and bad scenarios. Because the good side of it is that you get the time to be flexible at home, do the things you want. The bad side of it is you kind of feel always on. When I step out the door, which is just behind the monitor there, I'm straight into dad and husband mode, straight into our dining room.
Right.
Whereas when I was driving back from work, it would be process time.
Yeah.
20 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever it is. It gives you that time to disconnect, process, park all that, and then step into that mode. So sometimes that can be difficult to do that transition. But I think, that's my way of dealing with stuff at the moment, is actually try to think about what I'm trying to achieve that day and think about what I have achieved as well.
So you said you have a lot of meetings. So what's your tip to have better meetings?
An agenda is the most important thing, and making sure that the thing that bugs me with meetings is when a lot of people are in that meeting who don't need to be there for the whole of that meeting. And I had one of my colleagues describe to me, your doctor's surgery approach it is better than for something we've been doing, where it was generally a team of 5 or 6 people all together, all working on looking at the same spreadsheet, talking about the same, but then there might be person A is at the beginning, then person B, C, and then person A again, and then A, C, and kind of, again, this whole thing about disrupted focus.
Yep.
So the way that we do it now is we have 10 minutes where I'm in there going, right, tell me about your stuff, bang, 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 let's go through that, cut, 10 minutes done, manage it in 10 minutes. Sometimes I fail to keep it to 10 minutes because I'm talking and asking too many questions, as you can tell. But it gives the team members, because it's nothing worse than if you've got a 2-hour meeting and you've got a 15-minute slot and you're sat there, and
the rest of it's useless to you, like not needed for your work or for your job. Whereas it didn't need to be there.
Exactly. It's useful if some of that information is pertinent to what you're doing and tangential to your role and things like that. So it might be another member of the team that's doing stuff. So hearing about what they're doing, that can be useful. But a lot of the time, if you've set up accountability for your team and said, right, that's your bit, you've got to deal with that. That's what I want to know about. Listening to other people's stuff. If they haven't got time to do it, then go and do what your priorities are. If they but allow people to have those slots. So that agendas is the thing. Start them on time, finish them on early. Again, I go on a lot about a podcast I've listened to for years called Manager Tools. Mm-hmm. A couple of guys over in the States, Mark Hortzman and Mike Ozan, and there's a few other people who've come along doing those podcasts now. They've been going for, it's got to be well over 10 years. And all the things they talk about in there about meeting management is, if you're on time for a meeting, you're late, which I like, because if you arrive at the minute that it's meant to start,
right,
then people are wondering whether you're going to be there. They're not sure of it.
Yeah,
it's that sort of thing. And if you don't finish the meeting early, then people will struggle to get to the next meeting. Right. Another feature I'm using within Outlook is where if you book a half-hour meeting in Outlook now, you can set it so that it books a 25-minute meeting
instead
of a half hour. Or if it's an hour meeting, it books a 50-minute meeting, etc., and so on. And what that does, if you manage to those times, you can fit into those times. If you have an hour for a meeting, it'll last an hour. If you have 50 minutes for a meeting, you'll have 50 minutes. If you have half an hour for a meeting, it'll last half an hour. But you need to manage it, and you need to be willing to say, can we cover that later? Can we set that up later to talk about it? At this point, we've got this, and this to go through. Because it is easy to spread, to let the meeting spread, and I do it as well. And it's, especially when you're under stress and there's something important going on. But I think like today I was on meetings, I was hopping between a few different ones, and first one I was late, that I got late leaving. I was late for all the others, and that was 4 or 5 meetings I was late for because one of them overran. Now, it was because there was a little bit more complication and things like that. So that said to me that I didn't allow enough gap between those meetings as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's simple. It's not that hard to manage meetings, I don't think.
Well, yeah, and if you had a more organized or a more ruthless meeting facilitator, then they would end on time, or they would be able to adjust the flow and the time throughout there. So I noticed that part of your book title talks about productivity hacks. So what's some odd or unusual productivity hacks you've come across?
I'm trying to think which would be classed as the most unusual. I think, I'm trying to decide now. I think delegation is kind of straightforward. The one that probably jumps out is turning off all the notifications.
Yes.
I think that's the one that people would probably go, what? And that's the first one in my book. We've got all these wonderful tools that want to tell us that something's happening now. And they keep going, ping, pong, bong, bong, bang, bang, bang. You've got a meeting, you've got an email. Oh, by the way, you missed that. You've got another. Did you miss the email? By the way, it's still there. Like, you get the emails, it pings, your mouse wobbles, you get that toast in the corner that pops up. And you get your phone pinging you. You've got a tweet, you've got a Slack message, you've got a Teams message. All these things going bang, 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 bang. And I was reading an article somewhere about, I can't remember, I can never remember whether it was an article or it was a podcast that I listened to. It was a study that had been done around how long it takes to recover from an interruption when you're in the flow state. and they said something like 23 minutes, which I thought, 23 minutes sounds too long for me. The point they made was for you to get in the same flow state that you're in. So if you're in the middle of writing something, in the middle of reviewing something, to get back into that state, they said 23 minutes. And I thought, well, I did a bit of maths on that. And I thought, well, even if it's a small portion of that, when you look at the number of interruptions you get in half an hour and how much it might cost you, even if it's like 30 seconds, if it's a minute that costs you, you look at it and then you start timesing it up. It doesn't get long before you go, that's half an hour in a day. Yeah. And even doing that can do it. And it's like you've got your phone here. Now, I got in the habit recently of placing it behind me, just so that because they talked about there was another study where people were getting anxiety from not having their phone in their pocket. Yes. And the way they weaned some people off was to give them a plastic block that they kept in their pocket, because they would touch it just to yeah, exactly. They would touch it to see if it was there. Yeah. And I've done the same. I know one day I was panicking. I was freaking out. I was wandering around the house, chatting away to someone on the phone, trying to find my phone. I was like, where? Oh, you're right. Yeah, I'm just trying to find my phone. I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, you're talking to me. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, what am I doing? Because it wasn't in my pocket. Right. It wasn't where it always was. And it's that you know, the old the trick of the pickpocket, isn't it? Where you've got your watch and they squeeze your watch on, apparently. And then your body feels that pressure there. So when they take it off, there's still the pressure. So your body goes, all normal, nothing's changed, until later on, it's like, hang on, that's gone. And whereas if they just whip it off your arm without doing that pressing it first, that you'd notice it because there's been a change in the criteria. And that's the same with the phone, isn't it? But going back to the other piece they said about that, and I just think most of those notifications are irrelevant, unnecessary, and not as high a priority as the work that you're probably working on. If you've set your priorities and chosen, I've got to write this, I've got to read this, I've got to review this, I've got to talk to this person. Yeah, it's kind of like that's a big one with those. Your phone will vibrate on the desk. I remember if I remember right, it was an orange phone, and I can't remember the name of the company that made it. It was from the company Orange. It was a company phone. Phone was on the desk, and for whatever reason, they put in a like V8 engine to create the vibration on it. And we were sat in a meeting, and my phone was on the desk set to vibration, and the whole desk was shaking. People's papers were falling off the desk, and I'm like, yeah, all right. And it would have been less intrusive if it was off. But if it was just one, if you're on one-to-one conversation like we are now, and we were face-to-face in a meeting talking about building relationships, and you have a phone vibrating on your desk, immediately you go, one of you is going to be thinking, well, what's more important? Because you're just going to look at it, aren't you? What's more important? Now, it's not the case that the phone is more important, but it can send that message. There's even something that placing your phone on the table between two people, creates a message that the phone is as important or more important.
That's an intriguing point. I really like that point, because I hadn't thought of it that way, about the phone on the table between you. But yes, the phone on the table between you.
You're trying to put it there and go, right, if I put that up here and I'm putting it there, and it's like, if I'm sat here like this talking to you, why am I doing that?
Yeah, you're giving the phone far too much importance compared to what everything else is going on, compared to the conversation. And it makes a statement, and I hadn't realized, how much of a statement that makes. That's a really interesting thing to think about. And I agree with you. The notifications are crazy. I mean, first thing I do whenever I install a new app is dump all the notifications on it. And my phone doesn't ring or vibrate, and when I'm in a call or doing something else, because I'm supposed to be focusing on the person I'm talking to, right? So you're supposed to have some attention.
we got the watches that are starting to do it now, so I do consciously turn that off as well. But sometimes I find that quite useful. It's less intrusive. But again, I think, and I don't want to get too controversial, but I think there was the thing with President Biden when he looked at his watch at a ceremony. I can't remember what the ceremony was exactly. And I wonder whether in that case he's got a watch that just vibrated, and it's just the first thing you do. What's that? And you can't not, because it's just in there in the amygdala to go, what's that?
Yeah.
And
and the same thing for keeping tabs open or anything. If it's you have an email, human nature, you just have to go look. You can't just leave it alone. So
exactly. And the toast one that gets me is it pops up and says you've got an email, but then it pops up with Joe Blogs urgent. Oh no. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, your brain's going, even if you ignore it, should I check? Perhaps no, I might. But you're using processing cycles. You're not, and then you're straight out of that moment.
And that's a good point. Even if the phone is on the table and it vibrates between you, even it still interrupts the conversation. It interrupts what you were focused on. Because, as you say, both people are wondering about the call. Who's that? Is that a more important? And so just the notification itself, even if you don't answer it, even if you don't look. Your attention is still taken away. It's still, gone elsewhere.
I listen to another podcast about writing, authors and things like that, and they talk about storytelling. And one of the things they talk about that is when you've got, and it's a similar sort of thing. It's taking the reader out of the moment. So when you've got something in you have some action going on or something like that, and then suddenly they stop and then they tell you loads of information and then go back to the action. That info dump breaks that flow, breaks that engagement, and it's a similar sort of thing when we're in these scenarios where it breaks that flow of conversation between the two of you, as both of you look at the phone and go and ignore it, and it's kind of, where was I? That sort of thing.
Kind of like old commercial TV, right? Where they stopped every few minutes and threw a commercial at you. And I've always thought that aliens who started to watch our television could not figure out by, right when you're about to hear who's the murderer, and then bang, there's an ad for a car commercial. Like it makes no sense. It really it doesn't. And now that we've got things like Netflix and Disney and Amazon Prime, now we know that it makes no sense to have.
Yeah, well, they don't need it. They can do like, was it Red Notice? I don't know if you've seen that film with Ryan Reynolds, where he just has lots of massive product placement of his own gin in the films, which is quite funny. Made me chuckle a lot in that, and the product placement kind of thing. Well, it's there, isn't it? It's part of the story. He was drinking a bottle of gin. There you go. That's fine. It doesn't. It's his own gin, so people are buying. I think it does. That notifications thing is a real hard one to break, though, because again, it's the FOMO thing that people talk about, the fear of missing out. Same with emails, same with notifications, same with lots of things. It's about missing something.
Yes.
And social media's created that. We need to know what's going on now. That's that.
So we're going to be pulling this one to kind of wind it up. Is there something I haven't asked you, something you'd like to share, a technique, a tool, something that we haven't covered yet?
I think the only other one I would talk about, and again, there's 11 actionable hacks in the book, and if people haven't noticed who are on the video, it's that's what it looks like. And the one that I think it isn't first, but it is first in your mindset, in my view, is around prioritization, because all of the things I talk about, if you don't prioritize, you're still going to be not dealing with the things that are important to you. So even if you are focused, if you're focused on the wrong things, how can you do that? I don't put it first in the book, because my view is that there are some things in there you can do even if you're not focused, and it will save you time. Then when it saved you time, you can sit down and think about what's important to you, what's important to your role, and what are your priorities. So I would say that's another one that's in there. And prioritization, there's 150 different ways of deciding what your priorities are. There's hundreds of tools out there for working out what they're, and it's all going to be individual to you, and it'll change. But again, it's about not handing over control to others about what you do. Because if you say, actually, that's not on my priority list, I'm not doing that now, I'm doing this, that's you taking control of your time and your life. So that's the thing. Priorities underpin all this. A lot of the tools are there. A lot of these are just tools that can actually help. But if you've got your priorities right, then you can soar with it. And if that's it, really, that would be the one that I haven't mentioned at the minute. But there are a number of others in there.
Well, and very powerful, the fact that taking control and prioritization and focus, which we've discussed, and reducing distractions. So Nigel, where can people go if they want to connect with you?
You can jump onto my website. It's nigelcreaser.com. That's Creaser. I'm on LinkedIn, Nigel Creaser, you find me on there. On all the social media, I'm Sunday Lunch PM. That's my kind of brand that I use. There's the podcast, which is available on all of them. It's called the Sunday Lunch Project Manager Podcast, and you can hear Garland on that, as I interviewed him recently. A fantastic interview that we did there. If you want to grab a copy of the book, it's on Amazon at the moment. That's the only place. A hardback, paperback, and ebook. Audio book coming sometime in 2022 when I can find somewhere where I can record it at a high enough quality.
Great, and we'll put links to all those below in the description below, so people can follow that. Well, thanks so much for being interviewed, Nigel. It's, as I said, it's great to talk to a colleague, and thank you for sharing your productivity insights. And I look forward to chatting with you again in the future.
It's an absolute honor to be on the show. Thank you, Colin.
Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers now. Bye.
Bizmentum, online business networking, reimagined.